Welcome to Logos Live. I'm Robert Martin, Director of the City Bible Forum in Melbourne, and I'm your host for the show. Logos is Greek for word or message, and Logos Live engages the Christian message before a live audience in the CBD of Melbourne. And do we have a live audience here today? We also aim to have a bit of fun. Who said exploring the big questions of life shouldn't be enjoyable? How do you live well today? In this series of Logos Live Words to Live By, we offer practical and helpful advice to help us live and thrive in modern Melbourne. And today we're thinking about being crazy busy, helping me live amidst the busyness of life. And to help us, we have Peter Adam join us. Peter is a Vicar Emeritus of St Jude's Anglican Church in Carlton. He's the author of many books and regularly speaks around the world. In 2012, Peter was awarded an OAM for his services to the Anglican Church and to theological education. Please welcome Peter Adam. Well, Peter, welcome back to Logos Live. You've been on the show before.
I have.
And you've come back.
Yes, in my busy life, I found time to come back.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. So, Peter, what exactly does a Vicar Emeritus do?
Well, it's a great job because it sounds impressive. There's no money in it.
Right.
And the duties are ill-defined.
Wow.
Basically,
you do what you like.
It's a base for me to do my ministry around Australia and around the world. And I report back every now and then on what I've been doing.
And so, what have you been doing? Have you been busy?
I've been very busy, this year.
Yeah?
No, it's actually not too bad. I supervise research students in theology. I speak at conferences, preach at churches, mentor people in ministry, pray, and that seems to take up quite a bit of time.
Right. We do try to have a little bit of fun here on Logos Live, and today we're talking with Peter Adam about crazy busy. So, Peter, in today's quiz, I'm going to test you on being busy. Do you feel that you're qualified?
I have been busy.
Right. Well, okay. Well, that's probably qualifications enough then. Anyway, okay, so there's two questions, both multiple choice. So, question one. According to askamanager.org, how should you respond when your boss asks, "Are you busy?" Should you say, A, "Nope, we can go for a long lunch"? Or should you say B, "Yes, I'm finding it very hard to get to the next level of Candy Crush"? Or should you say C, "Busy doing what"? Or D, should you say, "I'm keeping busy, but I can make time, what's up"? So how should you respond when your boss asks how...
I think I'd go for D, for safety's sake.
Well, surprise, surprise, it's actually correct. It is actually D, yes. The other ones, of course, probably not...
Not wise.
Not wise, no, not necessarily. But we'll talk about maybe why that is in a second. Question two. In a recent global survey, what percentage of Generation Y, so those born after 1980, admitted that they sometimes pretend to be busier than they actually are? Was it A, 0%? They're all flat out trying to make it in the world? Was it B, 24%? A number occasionally bend the truth about their actual busy state? Was it 51%? C, just over half pretended to be busier than they actually are? Or was it D, 100%? They're all lazy slackers who never do any work at all.
Well, I'd go for 75.
75, but that wasn't one of the options.
I know, that's right. That's right.
Well, so that's interesting. Well, maybe you want to choose one of the A, B, C, or D just to...
I'm sorry, Rob, of course, yes.
Okay. C. The correct answer is actually C, yes. No. 51% pretend to be busier than they actually are. It's also interesting that whilst over half of Gen Y pretended, about 4 out of 10, 40% of people overall all claimed to be busier than they actually were. Have you ever claimed to be busy when you're not actually busy?
Yes, when I want to avoid somebody, that's what I say.
That's right. But you said you were busy before, didn't you? Yeah, sorry, anyway, we won't go into that.
I said I have been busy.
Okay, so anyway, congratulations, Peter. In our busyness quiz, you got 2 out of 2 correct. You're 100% right. Congratulations. So give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
So why do you think many of us pretend to be busy?
Well, I think our society values busyness so much that if you admit that you're not busy, it sounds as if you're an unproductive, unprofessional, and incompetent person, and not very important.
Yes, well, that's exactly what an article by Tim Kreider says in The Busy Trap, where it says that in our culture, busyness has become a virtue And so people are terrified of hearing that they have empty time. And he says in this article, busyness serves as a kind of existential reassurance, a hedge against emptiness. Obviously, your life cannot possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if you are so busy, completely booked in demand every hour of the day. So you're saying that we have to be crazy busy to feel significant?
Well, there are two questions answered. The one is, are we in fact busy, or are we just pretending to be busy?
Mm-hmm.
And then why would we pretend to be busy? The answer for both, I think, is that, well, it's a very odd feature of our society that our society requires busyness of us.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in that article, he talks about a woman who had talked about the deformative effect of her environment. That is, it's not that the individual decides to be this way, it is that our society makes us this way. Very powerful indeed. So I heard a little boy asked how he was, and he said his answer was very busy.
How old was this boy?
5 years old. But obviously that's what his parents said, so he thought this is what you had to be, very busy.
So what do you think drives that?
Well, what drives it, I think, is the idea of capitalism that you want the optimum output from a unit. So the busier we are, the more valuable we are. But it also, I think, comes from a need to be affirmed by other people. So although our education system is meant to produce individualists who are free agents making their own decisions, in fact, we've produced a very strongly conformist society. And if there are 14 people in the room and 13 people have said how busy they are, then I feel the need to say, well, I'm busy too. I'm part of this club. I'm one of the important people. What I do is important. I'm indispensable. I'm so busy.
So our busyness problem isn't just simply a matter of better time management.
No, it's not. No, that's exactly right. It's a deeper problem than that. Yeah.
Although that could be a problem for some, who need a diary.
Yeah.
So we've explored some of the issues, but why are we busy?
Well, we're busy sometimes because we want to get ahead in life, we want to get promotion, we want to make lots of money, and we see that the people who do that are people who are very busy and very responsible. So it could come from a desire for financial security. It could come from a desire for personal affirmation from other people and respect. It could come from a desire for sympathy. So, oh, you poor thing, you're so busy. How sad that is. So a lot of different emotions, I think, pressure us to be busy, or at least look busy, and act busy.
Well, what's the problem with that? What's the problem with being busy?
Well,
looking busy and looking productive.
Well, it's an odd thing to be in a kind of slavery to busyness. I don't think human beings are meant to be slaves to an ideal like that. It's as silly as this enslavement to look elegant or to be successful or powerful or something like that. They're all very demeaning slaveries. And I think for some people, they get caught in a kind of vortex where they get so busy that it actually destroys their lives and their relationships. So people who are too busy are naturally impatient with others. People who are too busy don't have time for the deeper questions of life, don't have time to relate deeply to other people, and I think eventually become boring and less productive. Because if all they think about is their work, well, that's not a very happy life, I think.
But do you think we like it, though? We like being busy?
Oh, yes. We're addicted to it. It's like being addicted to exhilaration or adventure or something like that.
Like being addicted to busyness.
That's right.
But you're saying that it's not so much just being addicted to busyness, but it's being addicted to what a busyness brings in terms of significance and affirmation, etc.
It's what it brings and what you lose if you aren't busy. So it has benefits and it has losses if you admit to having an empty life.
Well, then how can we tell if we're busy just because I've got lots to do, or if I'm being busy to feel significant?
Yeah.
How can I discern the difference?
That's a great question. I think you could ask the question, is your busyness productive? Is it purposeful and effective busyness? Or is it just, racing around like a headless chook or something like that?
Right.
To use a happy image. That is, some people are busy and it's entirely unproductive busy, but they just look busy.
Right. A
good question to ask is your busyness producing anything? Another question to ask is it destructive of you or of others?
What about yourself? So you've admitted at times in your life you've been busy.
Yeah.
How have you coped or how have you reacted to that?
Well, I don't know. It's part of being a perfectionist, I think, and being an ambitious person. That what I often do is write a list of things I have to do today, there are always 10 or 12 things on the list. There's only ever time to do 5 of them. Mm-hmm. So I end every day thinking, oh, I failed again. That's how busyness affects me. Exactly right.
Well, sometimes, it affects me sometimes when I write my to-do list. At the end of the day, I've got more things on the list than when I started.
Exactly right. You're losing. That's right.
You're
going backwards.
Is that kind of related to that vortex, I suppose?
It is.
It feels like that busyness vortex.
Yeah.
So how do you cope?
Well, one of the best things I've ever done, I think, in terms of dealing with that issue is to trust God in whom I believe. I remember I write out prayers for myself to pray each day, prayers I need to pray every day. And one of them I wrote down was, Dear God, I trust that today you'll provide all the time and energy for me to do the good works you want me to do. Mm-hmm. And it had a dramatic change that very day, because I remember I was driving to an appointment and I was driving more slowly. Whereas when I was ruled by my list, I was panicking, trying to get places, frantically, quickly to get there, which of course is not helpful for me, the car, or the other pedestrians or drivers on the road.
So I think I do recall in your last Logos Live, you mentioned that you do want people dead, and there are often people on the roads that get in your way.
Yes, no, I'm repenting of that, and, and I can now, with God's help and with intentionality, do 1.5 hours loving driving.
Very good. Well,
mostly.
You've just mentioned now that you obviously trust in God, you're a Christian believer, and as part of Logos Live, we reflect on the Scriptures, the Logos, and we're going to examine some wisdom found perhaps in a potentially surprising source, which is the Bible. But before we do that, we're interested to hear a bit about why you believe the Scriptures are worth following, Peter. So what convinced you to become a Christian believer?
Well, it took me, I wasn't brought up in a Christian family. It took me about 5 years to become a Christian. Mm-hmm.
What took you so long? Not necessarily it takes a long time.
Oh, no, I think it takes most people 4 or 5 years actually to become a Christian.
Right, yep.
Well, I think it was I had an inquiring mind. I wanted to read a lot and understand a lot. And partly there was no one around to help me. That is, I went along to church, but nobody ever sat down with me and said, why are you here? Or how can we help you? I just assumed to belong to the club, and so that wasn't very helpful. Mm-hmm. So I was converted when I was 16. And
so what was it that convinced you, or what was it that made you think this is for me?
Somebody explained to me, a very kind minister explained to me, that being a Christian wasn't a matter of being sufficiently kind and good, that I couldn't actually manage all the kindness and goodness needed. And what I had to do was trust in Jesus as the one who provided the kindness and goodness and my forgiveness. That was the moment for me. I remember it very clearly, the 3rd of June, 1963. And I went home and told my parents I'd become a Christian. And my dad said, well, you'll grow out of that. And I still haven't. No.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Peter, as well. It's a long time ago.
It is. It is a long time ago.
The part of the Bible we're reflecting on today comes from the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is a book from the Old Testament, part of the Bible. It offers short, pithy insights into the nature of life and the world. And it offers practical, memorable wisdom for living life. Now, would you say that Proverbs was a bit like Twitter of the ancient world, wisdom found in just 140 characters?
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah. It's practical daily wisdom. That's right. Observing life and learning from it, and getting wisdom from God.
Well, there's a passage we'll look at right now, which is actually from Proverbs chapter 3, which says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight.
Brilliant.
It's from the Bible. How does that help us with our busyness?
Well, I think it means that ultimately we're not in control of our lives. God is. Mm-hmm. We're not in control of the universe. God is. And so the best thing is to trust the God who rules all things the right way. And it means that we can express dependence without feeling guilty.
But doesn't it sound a little bit like abdicating personal responsibility?
No, I don't think of it that way. And I think we've made a God of personal freedom and personal responsibility. So in our society, we've lost God running things, so then we have to make ourselves God. As James Watson, a great scientist, said, if we don't play God, who will? So being God is quite a big responsibility if we try and do it ourselves.
So you think that might drive our busyness?
Absolutely.
Because I'm in control.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I was on the train coming down, and there was a thing, note saying, why don't you care for the eastern barred bandicoot? And if you watch enough television and hear enough, go on enough trams, you feel guilty about everything because, there are people all around the world in great need. There are animals in need and sick penguins in Antarctica and things like that, lost sheep in the Falklands. Mm-hmm. And you can feel, well, actually, I ought to be solving all those problems and I can't.
But does that mean that we abdicate our responsibility? That
No,
we just don't,
no.
I throw my hands up, it's too hard,
That's right.
I'll just go and get back to playing Candy Crush.
Yeah. No, because in Genesis 1, which the Bible starts, we read that God made humans in his own image and gave them responsibility, but it wasn't total responsibility, it was dependent responsibility and accountable responsibility. So human beings, I think, have a most significant part to play in the universe. And if I thought I was just a piece of cosmic dust or an accident, then I wouldn't quite know what to do. But I've got a God-given responsibility. I'm accountable to God for my time and energy and for my life. And I have to use it well.
Is it hard to trust something or someone that you can't see?
No, I don't find that. And in fact, if I look back at my years of living, I think I've learned to trust God more and more, to depend on him more and more, and to find that he's a trustworthy and reliable God, that his plans are actually better than mine. I remember once having a great fight with God because I wanted to go back to work in England and not come back to Australia, and his reply was, well, you can apply for as many jobs as you like, you won't get them. And I remember being furious, really angry with God. But now, looking back, 30 years later, I think, how wise he is. It was exactly the right thing to do.
But before we talked a little bit about our need to be busy to feel significant, how does trusting in the Lord overcome that?
Well, as the prayer I gave you as an example, I do say it every day, I trust that you'll provide enough time and energy for me to do the good works you want me to do. So rather than me thinking, I must achieve all of this, I'm saying to God, well, you're a generous Heavenly Father. You won't give me more to do than I can actually do. So please give me the time and energy and the trust in you so that I do what you want me to do, rather than panicking and trying to do everything, which is my default.
And what if we're not a Christian believer? How can I trust the Lord then?
Yes, it is. It's a difficult thing to do, but it might be worth giving it a try. It might be worth saying, well, God, I don't know if you exist or not, but I'm going to try trusting you for a week and telling you each day that I'm going to try trusting you and see what happens. That's worth a go, I reckon.
Have you seen it happen to anyone?
Yes, I have, yeah.
What was the outcome? What did they find?
Well, they came back at the end of the week and said, well, curiously enough, the week worked out quite well. So I said, well, why do you think that is?
What did they say?
Well, we went on with the discussion and so on.
Oh, okay, right.
There was no instant conversion, but I think it was a moment of wisdom for that person.
Realising that maybe this invisible God could actually
that's right.
care for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And realise that they're in control, not you.
Yeah.
But we talked about now trusting the Lord, but would this appear to contradict another passage of Scripture, another tweet of ancient wisdom?
Indeed.
In chapter 6 of Proverbs, which says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." So here the ant is praised for its industry and prudence. And ants don't have commanders or overseers, yet they store provisions for the future. And ants, they sound very busy. So don't we have a contradiction here? On one side we're saying trust the Lord, then to be busy like an ant. Is this saying that maybe busyness is not always such a bad thing?
Well, I love this proverb because one of my father's favourite words to me was sluggard, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes,
he
often used that to me. The other was lounging like a lizard, I think, was the one that I remember particularly.
Okay.
Because he thought as an indolent teenager who wasn't doing his homework or something, I was a sluggard. So I'm very attracted to this one. And I think some people need more of the trust in the Lord, and some people need more of the go to the ant and consider the ant's ways. But I don't think they're in contradiction. I think that our motto ought to be not to work without trusting, no trust without working. Because if I get down, wake up in the morning and go down to breakfast and sit at the table waiting for breakfast to arrive, it won't. I have to get it. That's just... Will God miraculously send me breakfast, cook the toast and so on, butter it for me, put some jam? No, he won't. I have to do it. That's part of being a responsible human being in God's world. But the trouble is we can get an imbalance. We can either head towards the ant thing, the ant proverb too much, which is what our society does, I think. We're all busy ants racing around and not enough trust. But the answer to that is not to trust God and not work, The answer is to work trusting God and to trust God and work. And by work, I don't just mean paid work, of course. I mean the daily work of living as well.
The administration, paying the bills.
Paying the bills, indeed.
Yes,
a good example.
Now, often responses to busyness is to stop and take time out and go on a retreat or rest or something. Yet the average worker ant works some 19 hours per day. When they sleep standing up and take power naps. So does the ant say something to the idea that the solution to being busy is to stop?
Well, I think God has fortunately made ants differently to human beings.
Right.
And we have more freedom of. I'm not a specialist in ants, you understand, but I think we've got more freedom of thinking and decision making and responsibility. I think ants are kind of programmed to be ant-like and be anti. In the ways in which, anti, anti as in...
Anti-ant.
That's right, yes,
That's right.
Anti-ant. Whereas we're actually responsible to make good choices about our lives. And if I meet somebody who is, genuinely just too busy, I say, you must take 24 hours off and look at your life and take responsibility for it and ask the question, is your busyness responsible? Does your busyness distort your humanity? Does your busyness impair your relationships? Does your busyness diminish your productivity? Those are great questions to ask.
A couple of questions have come in. So God sounds like he's got a good plan for me, but I have a boss who demands so much.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Well, that's a pretty common situation, I'm afraid.
Not if you work for the City Bible Forum in Melbourne.
No,
I
of
hope
course.
that hasn't come from my colleagues. That's right. That's right.
Oh, I thought that's what it said.
That's right.
Oh, no, it doesn't. No, I'm sorry, yeah. Well, that's the trouble, that our society produces, some bosses at least, who make unfair demands on their workers. And I say to a friend of mine, that's happening to her at present, I say, when it's time to leave work, leave work. She's staying behind for 3 or 4 hours every night. I'm saying go home. Or resign, find a boss who doesn't make unreasonable demands. Because the trouble is, if you have a very unreasonable boss and you give in to it, they'll just make more and more demands on you. So I heard one lawyer, a woman who said that she left for work at 7 in the morning and got home at 10 at night. And her legal firm provided a dinner every night because everybody did that. And of course she didn't see her children. And I said, you should resign.
In that respect, if you do make that career choice, then it reflects the first aspect we've been talking about in trusting that God will provide.
It also means you're trusting God to give you a life which is more than just work.
Another question's come in as well. So how do you avoid wasting time on trivialities?
Yes, that's the great problem. When you're too busy, you get caught in trivialities. And the other reason I do trivialities is because I'm putting off a difficult task.
So what are your trivialities that you enjoy?
Oh, well, I don't enjoy them, but I do them to kind of delay the stress of the difficult task.
Right.
And of course, the delayed difficult task becomes more and more difficult the more you delay it.
Yes.
So one of my current rules of work is to do difficult tasks immediately, so they don't cloud my mental horizon.
But there's a point at which trivialities are enjoyable, though.
No, I don't find them particularly enjoyable.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm just a superficial person.
Yeah. Yes, well, there are different gifts and different insights. God makes people differently, of course.
Certainly, yeah. I'm very
that's
trivial.
Right.
That's
yeah,
right.
Sure.
Yes. But I suppose other things like trivial things are maybe entertainment or sport or those sort of things.
They're not trivial.
Right.
They're gracious gifts of our loving Heavenly Father.
So maybe it comes down to defining what exactly is trivial and working
Absolutely right. They're not trivial at all.
Yes.
No. And
maybe I'm not so shallow after all.
Perhaps no, I don't know. No, perhaps you're not.
The proverb encourages us to consider the ant and to be wise. What does it mean to be wise?
Well, wisdom is a great gift, I think. Superficiality is the opposite of wisdom. And reaction to your environment, that is just being pushed around by other people, is a lack of wisdom. It's foolishness rather than wisdom. And I think we can be efficient but not wise. I think God calls us to be wise as well as effective and efficient and productive. Wise in our lives. As de Gaulle, I don't know if this is true, but de Gaulle's meant to have said, the cemeteries are full of indispensable people. And I thought afterwards when I'd heard that, well, actually, he ended up in a cemetery eventually too.
So we're left with maybe not so much of a seeming paradox now. Trust in the Lord and take responsibility.
Yeah, that's right.
How do we negotiate that?
Well, I think it's true of every area of life, not just work. So we're thinking about your future and retirement and old age and stuff like that. I think I must trust God about that, otherwise I panic. But I also have to take responsibility. I can't just say, well, God, I'm going to leave it up to you and I won't think about it. I have to make sensible choices about where I live and the kind of relationships I have and which retirement village I choose and so on. So in that kind of area, I have to trust God, otherwise I panic. But if I just say, well, I'll leave it up to God, then I'm being irresponsible and a nuisance for other people eventually. So, for example, I've started clearing rubbish out of my house. I'm a great hoarder, but I think, well, when I die, who's going to clean all that rubbish out? So I've started doing it, slowly, I must say, painfully, because I hate saying goodbye to things I like, but it's a responsible thing to do. It's not a sign of distrust, it's a sign of sensible responsibility and wisdom, I think.
And perhaps when you make the decision that you trust God to the result.
Yes, exactly right.
Then you don't have to feel regret or anything like that afterwards.
I trust God that I can do without this, whatever it is.
What sort of things have you been throwing out? Or can you share?
Even books. I took 3 big boxes of books and gave them away. I got rid of a harpsichord, which I wasn't playing often enough, and I thought, well, if I'm not playing it often enough now, I won't play it in the future, so I got rid of it. I've still got the dogs.
You didn't put them in a box?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So, Peter, crazy busy.
Yeah.
How can we live amidst the busyness of life?
Well, I think a great contribution to make to your workplace and to other people, your fellow workers, and to your spouse, if you have one, or to your family, and to your neighbourhood, is not to be crazy busy. It's actually a way of loving your neighbour as well as loving yourself. I think not to be crazy busy. And nobody else can solve this for you. That is, nobody else can order your life around. No other person can do it. I don't have one boss. I have what's now called a portfolio of tasks, I think. So there's no one to say to me, you're too busy. I have to take responsibility. And I think most of us have to do that. If we have a boss who's demanding too much of us, we have to stop them doing that. And if we have a boss who's not demanding enough of us, then we have to try and take responsibility and work effectively for them. Trust in the Lord and take responsibility.
Let me leave you with the Logos for the day from Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. I look forward to you joining us next time for Logos Live. Please thank our guest today, Peter Adam.
Thank you.